In the previous video, Ji-wook took her old love home, as she wasn't in a good state to drive. As soon as the man arrived at her home, the protagonist ended up getting excited about his return and let slip that she likes him. However, Ji-wook tells Bang-hee not to fall in love with him, and now will she regret what she just told him? I'm Nina, and in today's recap we'll be watching Suspicious Partner. Despite her lover's response, the protagonist says she won't regret loving him. As soon as the two enter the house, Bang-hee goes to his room and she spends the whole night crying. The next day they continue studying the case in which the law firm's client Hyun-soo has been accused of robbery and of taking the life of a very famous local boss. There is evidence that the man was at the scene, as there are his footprints and a button that must have fallen off his shirt. The murder weapon has not yet been found, but it is estimated to be 13 centimeters long. Bang-hee believes that Hyun-soo is a case like his own and hasn't given up on confirming a more concrete alibi for the man, so he wrote a message under the photo of the couple on the sign of the place he said he was at, that there was a birthday party going on. If it works and the couple return to the establishment, they can have a recording of the day that shows the man's face and confirm that he was there. Later, Eun-hyuk is a good friend and helps the protagonist relieve her sadness about what she's going through, since the same thing happened to him. In fact, it still does, but the man is putting his feelings for Yoo-young aside so that his and Ji-wook's friendship can recover. In the next scene, we see that Bang-hee and Ji-wook have sneaked into the crime scene to analyze whether there was anything that might have slipped past the prosecution or that someone might have been hiding. However, as soon as they arrive, Yoo-young shows up at the scene and catches them. She tells them that she won't arrest them if Ji-wook agrees to talk to her for 5 minutes, and since the man doesn't have much choice, he accepts. The woman wanted to talk to him about the other arrest that her client Hyun-soo had to face in the past. The man beat up another man and it almost led to the victim's death, so Yoo-young questions Ji-wook, before he used to arrest people like this client of his, for what reason has he switched sides? In the next scene we see Ji-wook visiting his client. Hyun-soo ends up confessing that he had the desire to take that man's life, because that victim had done something to someone close to Hyun-soo and the desire he carried was for revenge. Ji-wook receives the confirmation he feared. His client was looking to punish that man when he committed that act, so there's nothing to stop him thinking that he did the same for his boss, in case he knew something he was involved in, since he said he doesn't punish people for no reason. The next day, Eun-hyuk gets information from an employee of the establishment where the boss worked, that he was not a very good person and whenever he stepped out of line, his sister went into action to cover his tracks, and coincidentally, it was the woman who found the boss's body. In court, the prosecutors presented evidence that Hyun-soo was at the scene, through DNA, his shirt button and his footprint. However, Ji-wook argues that there really is such a thing at this crime scene, because the day before, the man had helped his boss drag a piece of furniture into his house, realizing that he needed help when he went to make a delivery. The lawyer managed to win on a few other points, such as the witness who had seen Hyun-soo leave the house said that he was without any luggage, so there was no way the man could have committed a robbery, as was one of the initial accusations, and that not even the stolen items have been located so far. Ji-wook got the last thing he needed for the judge to declare his client innocent. When he questioned the chief's sister, the woman called the ambulance around 1 p.m., yet her car was seen arriving near the residence at 11 a.m. Despite knowing that the woman was probably not guilty, the lawyer put pressure on her by accusing her, which led the boss's sister to confess that she had set up a robbery so that she wouldn't leak the horrible things her brother had done to some women, since when she arrived at the scene, the boss's actions were on TV and a verse from the Bible was written in blood on the blackboard. Even though Ji-wook was able to secure his client's innocence, the feeling that he was guilty still haunts him. While the people in the office were celebrating, Ji-wook took a break, because the couple who were celebrating their anniversary on the day of the murder, who would be Hyun-soo's alibi, called the lawyer to say that they had found the note on their photo and there was a video that caught the people present in the establishment. In the video it looks like a man drinking alone, but Ji-wook thinks there's still something wrong, so when he sits down in front of the mural to think, he notices that what the man said he did on the day of the murder was all fake, because the park with children running around, there's a photo on the mural, like the movie poster he said he tried to go see, but there was no time, or the food he said he ordered, all of which there were photos of or something written about on the mural. The rest of the story Hyun-soo made up. Now we see the group still in the bar drinking. The protagonist comments that she's still looking for the melody that the man who committed the crime she was suspected of was singing that day, and at that moment, as a simple viewer watching her drama, was in shock. We discover that in addition to Chan-ho there is another person involved in the case that Bang-hee was accused of, and he is Hyun-soo. Apparently the two of them work together, and just to clarify, Chan-ho actually works on the forensic team. In the first few episodes I thought he would be undercover, but I was wrong. Later, Ji-wook returns to the bar where his team is in order to find out more about his client's life. The next day, the lawyer asks Eun-ho for a favor, that he look into Hyun-soo's past, but that it only be between them, since the protagonist believes her client was innocent. Just like her, the man doesn't want to get her involved without being sure of what he's doubting. Later, when they're in the same building as the prosecutor's office, the two of them bump into the chief prosecutor in the elevator, and Bang-hee is rightfully wary, considering the last few encounters she's had with him. When they reach the floor they want, Ji-wook takes her outside and says he'll talk to the man. Inside the elevator, Ji-wook tells him never to touch the protagonist again, otherwise he'll make the chief prosecutor pay. Back at the office, Eun-hyuk tries to convince his co-workers to join him for dinner, but everyone is saturated after their hangover from drinking the night before. So we see that the man went to a park with a slice left over from the cake he had bought and opened a tent, put candles on the slice and sang happy birthday to himself, all by himself. To Eun-hyuk's surprise, Yoo-young showed up, even though she hadn't been invited. She remembered that he always went there on his birthday and decided to stop by to give him a present, but she soon leaves because Eun-hyuk doesn't feel comfortable with her presence. At night, we see that Hyun-soo has gone to meet Chan-ho. Hyun-soo seems to be the mastermind of the crimes. He asks Chan-ho what happened to leave his footprint and his button at the scene, as the man never makes mistakes, and says that he won't tolerate any more carelessness, as he already owes him for something. Hyun-soo comments that they will continue with their plan. 3 people have already disappeared and 4 will disappear. The next day, Eun-hyuk helps the protagonist once again about her feelings for Ji-wook and the lawyer. Seeing the two of them laughing, picks up the hose to throw water on them again, but because he has Eun-ho on his side, he doesn't do it. When the two return to the office, Ji-wook hears Bang-hee commenting that he's going to meet Hyun-soo at an establishment in his neighborhood. The lawyer followed the protagonist without her realizing it, but at the establishment he was discovered, and as soon as Hyun-soo leaves, Bang-hee presses Ji-wook to find out if there's anything wrong, but the lawyer still won't tell his partner anything. Over the next few days, while trying to think of any other holes that Hyun-soo might have left, Ji-wook realizes that Chan-ho has been to every court session, so the lawyer decides to go after him. First, Ji-wook asks him if he knows the boss who had his life taken or Hyun-soo who was being accused. As the man denies both, the lawyer gives him his little card so that he can call him if he knows anything that could add to the case. Later, Ji-wook receives a call from Yoo-young, telling him that he has found the painting that was supposedly stolen and that if he wants to analyze it, he can go to the prosecutor's office. At the scene, the lawyer says what he feared, it really was a case of revenge, which means that everything continues to point to Hyun-soo, even more so after his behavior when he was in prison and was questioned about his former imprisonment. In the next scene, we see that Chan-ho has decided to come clean and tell the lawyer something, but as he doesn't answer, the man calls the protagonist and tells her to meet him in the park, as Chan-ho has found out who bought those shoes for her that were along with the note. Before leaving the house, Bang-hee tried to contact Ji-wook, but when he didn't answer, the woman left him a message telling him that she was going to meet Chan-ho and why. The lawyer rushes to the scene, afraid that something might have happened to his partner, but when he arrives, he sees that the protagonist is crouching by her car, looking scared. Hyun-soo calls Chan-ho to ask him where he is, and the man lies. It turns out that Hyun-soo has cloned Chan-ho's phone and then appears behind him in the park. Returning to Ji-wook, he and Bang-hee return home, and on the spot, the man decides he's not going to push her away anymore and reveals his feelings for her by kissing her. However, the protagonist's reaction after the affection was simply to go to her room to reflect. Meanwhile, Chanho didn't seem to want to be under Hyunsu's thumb any longer. He was driving with the man behind him, when he suddenly stopped the vehicle and got out of the car, heading for Hyunsu's door. Chanho held her for as long as he could and, realizing that there was no way out of the trouble he was in, decided to throw himself off the bridge and fall straight into the river below. The next day, Ji-wook talks to the protagonist about his feelings, so that she doesn't think that kiss was a one-off. The lawyer says that he pushed her away at first because he didn't think he was enough for her, taking into account the fact that he had already been cheated on, saying that this was one of the reasons, but that now the man wants to win her over again and is ready to give himself up. However, Ji-wook won't be all over her either. He'll gradually win her over, and if one day the woman feels confident enough to open up to him again, he'll be waiting for her. The next day, the lawyer suffers the daily chatter of Eun-hyuk and Bong-hee outside and wonders what the two of them have so interesting to talk about, Ji-wook's jealousy growing more and more. Then the lawyer invites the protagonist to go with him to where Chanho works, because the night before she couldn't find him in the park before they left, and Eun-hyuk encourages her to accompany him. At Chanho's work, the two discover that the man has gone on vacation unexpectedly and is not at home either. However, they manage to get into the house because the owner of the building is there and is willing to show the couple around. At the place, the protagonist and Ji-wook didn't discover much, apart from a photo of Chanho with two other men. In the next scene we see that the chief prosecutor has called Yoo-young and Ji-hae into his office and asked the two of them to investigate the crime they committed with his son. The man wants to know if Bong-hee was really the culprit or if there was another suspect they missed. Moo-young also thinks about the possibility that Ji-wook may have planted the murder weapon, just as he did in the protagonist's house. After bumping into Ji-wook's office staff a few times, Hyun-soo goes back to find out their interest in his personal life and discovers that it seems that some of them are still investigating the case, even though they are no longer involved, and the man realizes that they may be doubting something he said. At night we see Yoo-young drinking with Ji-hae and talking about how much she misses her trio with the boys, when suddenly Ji-wook, Eun-hyuk and Bong-hee pass by outside. The woman comes out of the store ready to embarrass herself, but none of them give her the stage. But we see that as soon as Eun-hyuk says goodbye to his friends, he follows Yoo-young, who was very drunk, across the street to see if she'll make it home. Meanwhile, Chanho's car was found abandoned with the murder weapon inside, and we discovered that it was Hyun-soo who had set the whole thing up. The next day, Hyun-soo accidentally decides to meet the protagonist and tells her about his false alibi, at which point she begins to understand what Ji-wook was hiding and becomes suspicious of Hyun-soo too. The lawyer calls Bong-hee and asks her to take the man to the office to eat with them so that they can get something out of him. When the protagonist arrives home, she pulls Ji-wook into a corner and tells him that she knows what he's been hiding and suspecting Hyun-soo of, and that now she wants to find out. Eun-hyuk happens to overhear the conversation, but disguises it when he's caught. As soon as the three of them go downstairs, they come across another visitor. Yoo-young has gone to the office to tell them that he's going to start investigating Hee-jun's case and has stayed to eat. What did you think of these episodes? I hope you enjoyed the summary. Leave your suggestions in the comments and subscribe. If you liked the video, like it and share it to help me. Until next time.